The consulting toolkit and I suppose area of specialism that I've developed is essentially around helping teams to stay healthy, often in high demand environments, whether it's the demands of work or the demands of life. But often when people think about investing in team development, they either think of something that's kind of on the screen that, what's on the screen is a bit of tongue in cheek. It's let's do an office sports day, let's do something fun together, an escape room or whatever it might be. Or the other approach is around let's bring in a psychometric, and that's going to help us to understand each other better. And there are lots of psychometrics out there. We've got personality type profiling like Myers-Briggs, or DISC profiling for behavioral profiling, Belbin for role identification, or Clifton strengths. And often these can offer immense value and insight, but they might not actually help with what the team actually needs to be more effective. And today I'd just like to offer a framework which may prove useful. We're just thinking about what might be going on for your team and where might be worth paying specific attention with regards to your team development. Before we talk about team strategy or culture, I kind of think it's worth recognizing something quite simple, which is that teams are made up of individual, wonderful, flawed, struggling, excited human beings, and everyone like arrives at work in a different state. And I think like it's kind of natural for me, I guess, when I was thinking about this webinar, to think like it has to start with the individual. When we wake up in the morning, understandably, our first thoughts are about ourselves. How am I feeling? What are my energy levels? What am I concerned about? Or what have I got to face today? And I've put a heart on the screen, and the reason that the reason I've put a heart on the screen is because I'd like to introduce the concept of heart. There are different ways of knowing as human beings. We've got experiential knowing, head knowing, logic and analysis, and also heart knowing. And if you kind of do a bit of research, there are at least over 10 different ways of knowing something as a human being. But I'm just interested to know, Lisa or Richard, I don't know if you're happy to share some thoughts, but like when I just introduced this idea or just this kind of phrase of heart knowing, like what comes to mind?
And for me, and obviously I've done quite a lot of work around this, so it's probably a little bit easier for me, but it's that sense of where I am right now. And I guess from an emotional point of view, it's understanding that those feelings of what's going on for me. So I sort of share the weekend just gone, we had an 18th and 21st joint birthday party for my two girls. And it was such a lovely event because there were all the people there that we really loved and wanted to be with. And when I woke up the next morning and took the dog out, I had this real sense of just gratitude and happiness, and just felt on top of the world. And it felt like my heart was full. So I don't know whether that helps, Dave, but I guess that's how I would see it. I don't know whether Richard's got some other thoughts on how he would describe it.
Richard, any thoughts?
Yeah, when I was in the workplace, it was for me mostly about task and what needed to be done and who was doing it. So very objective and factual. And really, in the team that I was in, we didn't engage in each other's, if you like, out of work lives unless they brought that to the table. So it's not that it was like, you weren't allowed to bring your whole self to work, but the onus was on each individual to do that if they wanted to share that they'd had a birthday party at the weekend, or that they were feeling down about a leak in that house or whatever. There was no that didn't naturally come out. It required each individual to be bold enough, to say, hey, for me, today isn't just about achieving the tasks on my to-do list, but I've got this going on in my out of work life too.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. I mean, for me, when I'm talking about like heart, there is like this check within me. I kind of think like, oh, is it a bit slushy? It's kind of a bit embarrassing, like talking about it in like a business and work setting. But I guess like in certain sectors, like, traits of the heart are, I guess, acknowledged and uplifted more often. Like in the military, for example, like there's a lot of language and emphasis on courage and honor. In sports, there's there's that kind of sense and language around, playing with heart, leaving absolutely everything on the pitch. Or in healthcare, like we want to treat patients with care and dignity. These are essentially traits of the heart, the kind of the seat of our character and our emotions, which actually it kind of drives effort, it drives thinking, and the approach. So I think, even though I do personally struggle a little bit with actually kind of the concept of heart, in a business setting, the way that I kind of think about it is it's a non-technical phrase for a kind of knowing that actually comes through felt awareness, inner conviction, emotional intelligence, maybe some like relational information there as well, rather than pure like logic alone. And I think when we engage with this kind of this concept of heart, and for some groups it might be easier than others, it can actually be a shortcut to kind of understanding like what's going on for us really, like as human beings. So a helpful question could be just simply asking like, what's in my heart today? Or like, how is my heart today? And as I just kind of click through some different kind of phrases on the screen, I just wonder if any of these kind of resonate with you. But our hearts could, as Lisa said, be in a really healthy and open place. And also, as I'm sharing this, like this will be the case for individuals in our teams. My heart's healthy and open today. My heart is engaged and actually keen to get stronger and learn, or actually like I'm just fully on board. I'm committed. I want to smash it and give 110% to this thing. Or actually I'm not really feeling it anymore. I'm kind of losing heart. Or maybe actually I've just checked out and I'm done with this team. I'm done with this group. I'm done with this work. I've lost heart. Maybe I've been hurt. I'm actually showing up to work with a broken heart at the moment, and therefore I'm actually seeking to protect my heart. Or maybe I've come through all of that and actually I'm in a place of, healing and fresh hope. So yeah, I was going to actually, if there were more people on the webinar, I was going to invite folks to take some minutes to turn their cameras off and just ask themselves that question: how is their heart today? And is there anything they want to is there anything their heart is telling them? But I think I probably won't do that today.
I think it's a really nice question for people that are going to be watching the recording of this to just take that second, take those few seconds. We probably don't do that enough in the workplace as it is, but that time to reflect. Funnily enough, saw a post on LinkedIn from a colleague that I used to work with who said he'd been reflecting on the work they've been doing recently and had gone out for a walk with the dog and spent that time just reflecting on how things have been going. So I think it's really useful to ask those questions, Dave.
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, yeah. So if you're watching the recording and you want to hit pause, then I'd like to encourage you just to do that shortly. Just close your eyes, maybe put your hand on your heart. For some reason that helps. Breathe, feel your feet on the ground, and then just engage with your heart. So ask yourself, how's your heart today, and just see what information comes back to you. And for me anyway, I find that a helpful exercise because I'm so in my head all the time, and I just often just forget that I've got this other part to me, this kind of deeper, more emotional side, which is often trying to communicate to me. So I'd love just to hear again from Lisa and Richard, if you're happy to kind of share, but like, what do you think kind of affects our heart state?
Definitely stress.
Yeah.
Definitely stress. And that can come from all sorts of areas. So, you know, family stress with relationships with, you know, children or partners, financial worries, but also in, you know, I've been in a workplace where there's been big changes in the team and different personalities, and had that feeling of feeling quite unsafe, unsure. And you mentioned protecting, and definitely felt that I was having to protect myself. So I think lots of things can affect your heart state, and also even just having a bad night's sleep, being tired, being dehydrated, not eating enough food, or eating too much food.
Potentially, yes. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. In my mind, I might, maybe categorize that as physical state, but it's all a wonderful mix. Yeah. Any thoughts, Richard?
I think Lisa's covered it well. The first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question was stress. Definitely, stress in my non-work life affects how I show up to work in the morning. I get that we can choose how we behave when we're at work, but it's quite hard to completely compartmentalize. And if you have got something, could be relatively trivial, like your train was late, or somebody sat in your favorite seat, or it could be really traumatic, like your marriage is breaking up. But whatever it is, that is still going to be there in your heart, however you try and behave in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I kind of noted down in preparing for this presentation was, is this team, is this work actually, is it meeting my needs and wants? Am I suited to the work? How's my self-esteem levels? Does the purpose of this work align with where I want to go? Is it a purpose I can get behind? How much certainty or uncertainty is there? Like, what's the kind of the sense of equity or fairness within this group? What's the level of social connection? So I think for me, like all of those, and alongside what you said, all of these things can affect kind of that sense of heart state. Can I show up and be fully engaged, fully committed? And I suppose
you said something that resonated, so I wanted to come in and I guess amplify the point. So a lot of the time, in my workplace at different points through the career, there was often a sense of, whatever you're doing in your team or in your job, fine, but some sense of anticipation, like negative anticipation about what else might be impacting you. Like, I guess the archetypal situation is you think you're doing a good job, then you have your your performance review, and 90% of that is spent on the few things that you didn't do well, rather than what you do well. And if that situation sort of persists or recurs, then I think people naturally end up apprehensive, and so they're burning nervous energy, not doing their job, but wondering what's the next thing that's going to come at them from the wider organization. And I think that massively impacts on a daily basis.
And the culture and the behaviors that are used, and just within your team or your management or the company itself can hugely affect your well-being and your psychological well-being and stress levels. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But essentially what I'd like to kind of land, and maybe the points obvious from the start, but essentially when we're thinking about team development, teams are made up of people, and the well-being of those people, the support available to help them to show up as their best self, it really matters. And sometimes that is something which you can offer as a line manager, as a company yourself, but sometimes it's actually helpful to bring in external support. And that's one of the reasons why we offer, as a consultancy, well-being coaching and therapeutic coaching support, where staff just might need a little bit of extra support if they're actually just struggling for whatever reason. So let's move forward. So let's get back to the kind of the topic of teams. Teams are made up of individuals, but let's now imagine that we've got a group of individuals whose hearts are in it. They're doing physically and mentally well. They're committed and they care about doing great work. The next question is how is this team that we're in going to function? And within the stages of team development, as you kind of form the team and as things begin to kind of get tricky and things aren't clear and people start falling out with one another, and then people are kind of scared to have the difficult conversations and don't really want change to happen, as teams go through all these different phases, there are common states which teams can drift into, and they are either one of anxiousness. What's my responsibility, and have I succeeded or have I not? At worst, it's fear. Frustration. I thought that this person was gonna do this and they haven't done it, and hang on a second, how has this decision been made? Like, I didn't sign off on that. And actually, frustration at its worst, anger can crop up and can exist within the dynamic of a team. And then either complacency or apathy, actually just that sense of, oh, this is good enough and this will do, and let's just kind of take the easy road and not keep the purpose of the team in mind. How can we keep making improvements all the time and changes all the time so that we can, let's say we're in a football team, so that we can win the cup. It's not about the individuals, it's about the team and the team performance. And at this point, I'd like to offer kind of the main framework of today's presentation, which is essentially around 5 agreements. And I'm indebted to the work of Mark Rogachnik here. He's part of the Heart Styles community of associates that we're part of, and he completed his PhD in team development. And in his work, he identified that actually teams need to find shared agreement, shared clarity, a shared understanding across 5 main areas, and that helps them navigate through those pitfalls of anxiety, frustration, and complacency. They're not one-offs. I know that Lisa kind of in the intro was sharing about team days, and yes, we run team days, but actually it's helpful to think about team development as part of a journey. Like, it probably takes 9 months or so for a team that comes together to reach a high performing state. And these agreements need to be found on a regular basis over the course of time. And interventions can be a team day, but it could be multiple interventions along the life cycle, along the kind of the journey. So the first one, the first agreement, is the ambition agreement. Is there shared clarity around what is this team? Where is it going? What matters most right now? And a very simple exercise is to ask everyone, get your team together and ask everyone around the table to write down on a bit of blank paper, what is the priority for this team over the next 6 months? Everyone writes it down, and then compare answers. And if everyone has written something different, then the team is unintentionally pulling in different directions, and that is helpful to get clarity on what is the ambition, what is the purpose and the priority for this team. Sometimes that's a really simple process, but sometimes things actually, to really get clarity on that, takes time. And it takes, because situations, ecosystems, businesses are so complex, sometimes interventions become are more considered. And that's why we use a modality called Lego Serious Play. We can run 1 or 2 day programs where we get groups of people coming together and carefully thinking and building answers to questions like, who are we at our core? What's our USP? what are the emotional and psychological factors that are at play right now for us as a team? What are the external pressures affecting us? What are the accelerators and the brakes? Where do we want to get to? What does success look like? What are the next steps? And that process, it really helps teams build genuine shared ownership around the ambition, the direction. And it's a process of slow, careful thinking, engaging head and heart, careful discussion. When things are placed on the table, there's time for discussion. Like, are we placing this in the right place? Like, how impactful is this? And it is really around careful thinking and discussion about where is this team going. So that's agreement number one is the ambition. Agreement number two is the working together agreement, and that's essentially around who is doing what, and what are people accountable for, and what are the consequences when key responsibilities are not delivered. So, for instance, if you're in an orchestra and you play out of time, or there's discords, that has consequences for the performance of the group. And, it's no different for the teams that we're in. So again, a practical tip, a little simple exercise you could do is just ask everyone, get around a table again, give everyone a big sheet of paper and ask everyone to map out, draw a spider diagram, map out their roles, their responsibilities, key stakeholder relationships, either internally and externally, maybe state the consequences of what if they don't deliver on their key deliverables. Now, you could do that as an individual. Maybe you could also do it for someone across the table. That's if you've got time to do that. And then again, everyone reveal their results. Is there shared understanding, or are there like misunderstandings? Well, hang on a second. I thought I was doing that, and or you said you'd do that. If the process is around figuring out where are the overlaps, where's the duplication, where's the gaps, where's the confusion, and again, if there is different understandings, it then creates frustration, it creates anxiety. And another example, like from work, is we were running a Lego Serious Play event and asking people to map out like what the dynamics of the business. And as you can see on the slide, someone built a model of it's an effing mess, and that led to another like helpful intervention that we supported them with. And we spent the day in the boardroom. We got paper all over the boardroom table and across the walls, and we mapped out every single task that is required, from brand building all the way through to client delivery. And then slowly but surely the team discussed and put names against each of the tasks and got really clear on who is doing what. So that can be helpful for individual teams, but it also can be helpful for teams of teams. This is working with a directorate when across the nation for national charity, sub-teams have been very, very innovative. But there was now a lack of clarity around how do all these sub-teams are doing with what they're doing. How does that all fit together? And where are the areas of tension? Where are the opportunities? Where are the kind of sources of tension? And so again, it can be really helpful with an intervention like this to bring clarity on how does this group at a higher level all function together, and where are the issues. So area number 3 that teams should find helpful to work on is called the culture agreement. And I guess culture on one level is created by many things. We've got the environment that we operate in. Do we work from home, or are we in a WeWork office that has beer in the office? And we've got policies, systems, the symbols and the brand and the stories that are told. But in my view, the biggest driver of culture is behavior. And when you ask teams, what kind of culture do you want to have, and what kind of culture, what behaviors will help deliver on agreements 1 and 2, most teams say similar things. They'll say like, oh, we want trust, and we want accountability and open communication and collaboration. So, so the question then becomes, how do you bridge the gap? Because you have aspirational values, and they're put up on the wall, but actually the lived behaviors in the day-to-day interactions, especially when things are stressful, can be quite large. There can be a gap there. So the question is, how do you to bridge that gap? Our kind of modality of choice for this is um, uh, a psychometric and a framework called Heart Styles. And the reason we like this is because it offers a shared framework to talk about behavior and to kind of talk about it in quite a segmented and organized way. It also normalizes our defensiveness, and it just kind of gets it out on the table and just says, look, we're all sometimes under threat and we get defensive. Let's just own that and just be honest about that. It also gives a metric. It enables us to measure behavior. It gives insight into people's heart states and the impact that might be having. It offers 360 feedback, and also it just doesn't leave people there with just the feedback. It gives pathways for growth as well. And as you can see here, like this is just one simple way that Lisa and I ran a program recently outdoors in a park in central London, and we got teams just colouring in the different behaviours on the Heart Styles indicator, and then feeding back to one another. Where are we strong as a team, and where can we develop with our behaviours? And essentially, what happens on a program is, day one, you get people talking about behavior safely. They reflect on their individual results, processing the feedback, build a personal action plan. And what you then get is you get a team of individuals in the team collectively going, this is the step forward that I need to make in order to be better contributing to the culture of this team. So that's one of the ways we kind of help to bridge that gap. And then maybe in a second day, what we can do is we can use the Heart Styles indicator, and you can start to overlay company language onto this model. So maybe like the company will use vernacular such as, we want to have radical candor, or we want to have big kindness, or whatever it is, and we go, okay, great, well let's use that, let's scribble that onto the indicator. And that's Heart Styles word for that is authentic and compassion. And then what you can do is you can actually use the data to review the team-wide results. So as you can see on the screen, we've got the benchmark indicator. It's just a team of 3 people that I worked with recently, and you can see that actually, as a group of individuals, they aspirationally want to behave in this kind of effective, growing way. They don't want to be defensive. And so you can see that's like how they aspirationally want to be. But then when you look at the combined self score as a group of individuals, it's not where they want to be. And actually there's a lot of fear, there's not a lot of reliable, there's not a lot of relating or authentic. So essentially then you can explore the data as a team and go, what are the implications on your culture as a group? Why might this be happening? Because there could be huge amounts of reasons. Like what's the why that is your why? And then, okay, what are the next steps? Let's generate some ideas, and we've got a process for that, and agree some actions going forward. And usually and always, in fact, with culture, the goal is like, how can you create a great team spirit, where we're driving results, but we've got a great vibe, a really positive group where people just like to be together. So this is our method for doing culture work, and we've seen it kind of create genuine culture shifts again and again. Agreement number 4 is essentially the debate state. So one of the markers of highly effective teams, leadership teams in particular, is the ability to have dense conversations and to disagree regularly, wrestle with issues, to think deeply and carefully, to challenge ideas without taking things too personally, and keep purpose above ego. And it can be just hugely helpful for teams to use a method like Thomas Kilmann's conflict questionnaire, and you kind of map out the different kind of states that we can go into in conflict and go, okay, this is sometimes when it gets tricky, this is where I go to, and this is what is required of me, or this what would be particularly helpful in order for me to get back to a more collaborative and relaxed and open state. So that can be a helpful tool to use. Heartstars also helps with it. And then also it can be really helpful. Again, the task is to reduce frustration and anxiety. It can be really helpful for teams to gain clarity around how do they make decisions. So do we vote? Does the CEO decide? Do we use consensus? Do we follow the data? What decisions belong to this team? What decisions belong above us? What decisions belong below us? Do we bring in external consultants? And to have the conversation, to find that shared agreement around how do we debate and how do we make decisions can be a really useful area for teams to look at. And the last agreement is the relationships matter agreement. And this is essentially building a shared understanding around who are the people that we're working with, not just like the human resources there to fulfill a function, but actually like the human beings, and to understand one another's differences, maybe who folks are at a deeper level, and then to proactively manage this, to find a kind of a shared understanding and a shared approach around what are we doing to strengthen the relationships between us. That's often, I think, where people go when they think of let's do a team day. It's like we'll do some games and we'll do a psychometric. It's essentially around trying to work into this area number 5. I think there are some easy wins that you can gain, or you can do if you're leading a team. So you could get out some big paper again and ask people to draw a river and say, look, this river is your life, and maybe include the bends in the river. What are some of the highs and the lows and the defining moments or the experiences that have shaped them and that bring you to this place today? Give people time to share. Or another activity could be, what gets the best out of me? What gets the worst out of me? What do I need when I'm under pressure? And there are simple activities that you can do to get to know one another better, and it can really strengthen the connection between you. When I think about relationships, I often think of the picture of a bridge. It's like when I first meet someone, it's like the relationship's a rope bridge. It's like we're just kind of getting to know one another, but like you can't really put heavy stuff over that. Whereas I've been married for, I don't know how long now, close to 20 years, maybe 17, 18 years. And actually like that relationship is strong, and actually like the kind of conversations and feedback and that can go over that relationship is, it can carry weight, it can sustain heavier things. And when we're investing in relationships in our team, the more we get to understand one another and trust one another, the greater the weight of what can kind of be carried across those relationships. So yeah, that's some thoughts on that. Any thoughts on any of this so far, Richard and Lisa? I appreciate I've been talking for quite a while.
You can go, Richard.
Okay, there's an awful lot to digest there. I mean, as we were going through, Dave, some things, were occurring to me, like on the working together point. I'll just mention it because it's one that's in my head. I can distinctly remember being in a team where a lot of effort was put into clarifying individual roles and responsibilities, but as soon as something wasn't going right, it then suddenly became, okay, it isn't your role to do this, but can you do it? Because, the team overall or the business overall needs it. And that would happen multiple times, like in all different directions. So if you like, on paper, it was stated, Richard's role is this, Dave's role is that, Lisa's role is that. But day-to-day activity was much more like, all hands to the pump as dictated by the person who was overall leader. That confusion, I certainly found very unhelpful and unfulfilling, and I'm sure I wasn't alone. So that's just one example of where you've described something that helps teams work well, that I can immediately think of a time in my life where it hasn't been like that and the team hasn't worked well as a result.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And I guess that's kind of why it comes back to my point around the agreements need to be continually found. It's like, let's say you play a football match and you've agreed this formation, but then the reality of the match happens and everything goes to pot. Basically, what you then need to do is debrief as a team when you get an opportunity and go, why did this happen? And like, what can we do next time? And how can we evolve? And so that next time when it gets a bit crazy, you're able to kind of hold formation. And so that's why these agreements need to be kind of, I guess, like a continual thing.
Yeah, and I think, Dave, let's be honest. The three of us, myself, you, and Kate, are fairly new to this team of Uplift, and we've definitely had to navigate some of this difficult conversations. We've different experiences, different opinions, different objectives, different perspectives on things. So I know that, yes, definitely when we first started, it really did feel like a really wobbly rope bridge, but I think we definitely feel like we've strengthened that bridge together.
Yeah, definitely. And we've just gone through the normal journey that teams go through. Storming, norming, it's all part of it. So yeah, there we have it. There are broadly speaking, there are 5 areas where it's helpful for teams to find consistent shared agreement with one another, shared understanding. Where are we going? What's the ambition? How are we going to work together? What kind of culture are we going to have, and how are we going to have it that are going to help us achieve that ambition? How are we going to disagree regularly in a healthy way, in a debate state? And how do we want to do the human? How do we want to do the relationship side of things? So there you go. There's some thoughts. I hope they're helpful when thinking about the teams that you might be part of, and they are considerations that we take when we listen to clients about if they're thinking of investing in some kind of team intervention. We kind of take them through this and go, look, where's your team at, and what specifically would be useful to you. So yeah, thank you for listening.
I was just going to ask a question, actually, Dave, that maybe I should know the answer to, but I'm just wondering, looking at those on the screen, do they have to be done in order? Can you just take one and, so for example, could you just take the debate state and do that?
Yeah. So they don't need to be done in order. Some teams go, we've got a great culture. The vibe is great. Everyone's hearts are super happy, but actually we're not really clear where we're going. And, it's helpful to do some kind of more strategic work. And yeah, we've got some workshops that could equally just be helpful for just doing the debate state. And often what you can hit a number of these in an intervention. We do outdoor programs, and you do a bit of culture, a bit of relationships, a few of those can be weaved into a one day or multi-day program, or a series of meetings in an office. So
yeah, I mean, certainly the day that you and I did the other day was definitely about working together, and culture and relationship was all sort of wrapped into the whole day.
Yeah. Great.
Have you got any questions, Richard?
I guess the thing in front of mind for me is, after the team day, everyone's got this sort of shared language, or maybe they've got some permission to talk more about things that maybe they weren't sure how to broach before. But then 1 month, 3 months down the line, everyone's just back to reverting, behaving how they were. How does any individual sort of prevent, all of the effort that goes into a team day from ultimately being wasted because the changes aren't sustained.
I think, what's initially coming to mind is, I guess it kind of depends on the organization. And there are different options which you can, I guess, engage with if you have the right intent. So certain organizations, have head of culture, head of people and culture, and it's part of their brief to lead on it. I was working with a small team the other day, and they went, right, it was really helpful doing this Heart Styles program. We need to do another one in 6 months and a recap, and let's kind of go over things. It doesn't need to be the same, like, just a copy and paste of last time, but let's keep it on the agenda because this is important. And we sent them a load of resources that they decided that they wanted to kind of start using in their weekly team meetings. Just let's start looking at some of the effective behaviors and some of the more kind of defensive behaviors that we go to under threat, and learning more about those in like a bite-sized way on a weekly basis as a team. And coaching is another way that it's sustained as well. Some programs we do, and leaders whose behavior may cast a big shadow depending on the size of the organization and their level of seniority. If they want help with shifting some of these things, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. And actually, a coaching relationship over the course of 6 months, 9 months can be one of the things that actually keeps the journey alive, because they're really wanting to invest and in how they're showing up. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's options, but it's a key thing to think about, is how do you, once like kind of a culture seed has been planted, let's do this, and let's try and be like this. How do you water that seed? And there are a number of ways to do that.
Yeah, there was a charity, wasn't there, that you did the initial work with, I think about 18 months ago, and then I went back in earlier this year, and it wasn't exactly the same event, but they were really appreciative that it was that reminder again about the model and the language, and people felt that it helped them just to embrace it a little bit more, and they started to put posters up and bits and pieces like that. So there are lots of ways, but I think it's a good point, Richard, is that some of these things, they're not just you go in and do it and then walk away. It's how do you then keep those messages going? How do you keep the changes happening and keep people on board?
Great. Well, thank you, Lisa, and Richard, for listening to this presentation, and for anyone who's watching, thanks for making it to the end.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I just wanted to mention, Dave, I don't know whether you still got this slide, and it obviously depends on when people are rewatching this, but we do have a Heart Styles specific experience day that we are running in central London on the 11th of June 2026, and we're keeping the numbers specifically small, so 10 to 15 people, and we've got a few spaces that have already been taken. So if anybody's interested to understand a bit more about Heart Styles specifically, I think it's one of those tools, Dave and I would definitely agree, is that once you experience it, you really understand the depth of how it can help you. So you get to do your Heart Styles indicator. It's £200, full day up in central London. There's a link on the screen now so that you can click, and that'll take you to our website where it gives you a bit more information. And if you just want to book, all you need to do is just get in touch with Dave. So Dave at Uplift Consulting, at uplift-consulting.co.uk. Send him an email or give him a ring, and book your place. But it's been really great. I hope that for those people that are listening back, if there's anything that Dave or I have spoken about today that has sparked your interest, you'd like to know more about how we can help you and your teams keep developing, keep growing, just get in contact with us, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. So thank you very much.
Right. You want to stop recording?